Welcome back, everybody. So last week, we were diving into the cosmic implications of just one line of our prayers around the Shema. We were talking about Yotzer Or, using a little pop culture from 2001, A Space Odyssey, and from Game of Thrones to help us understand different ways one can see nature. Either as governed by two opposing forces, good and evil, like in Zoroastrianism, and seeing nature as beautiful but perhaps fickle and requiring a Ubermensch, a super person, to rise up and make the best of what is otherwise a depressing situation. Or the Judaism we saw had two sort of alternatives to those extremes. We had the phrase "Oseh Shalom Uvorei et Hakol" in our prayers, which is actually the rabbis changed from "Uvorei et Hara." They're quoting, of course, from Isaiah. And we ended with these two ways of dealing with a more hopeful vision of nature, either of seeing, as Rabbi Harold Kushner did of blessed memory, that God's creation ended, and now we're dealing with it, even with little pockets of chaos, but we're still grateful for creation and for what we do have. Or Rabbi Rich L. Isaacs, who taught us that God is a creator of both good and bad, and that should inspire us to be more mature in our relationships, because relationships are not all good, but are mature and full and real. So today, we're going to get deeper into the allusions behind yet another prayer, Baruch She'amar. We're moving backwards in the service. Now we're at about, if your service started at 9:30, we're here about 9:35 or 9:37 in the morning. Or Shachar, if you're from the weekday Shachar, this is maybe about 7:37 rather than 7:30. And to get into the mood for that, I will attempt to play a 4-minute clip for you of a very young Alan Rickman in his breakout role for British television. No, I'm not talking about Professor Snape in Harry Potter, although he did play this later. In this case, it's the Reverend Obadiah Slope. This is a character Rickman played in the BBC program The Barchester Chronicles. It was on in 1982, an adaptation of Barchester Towers by the famed 19th century author Anthony Trollope. Now, here you're going to see flavors of the pre-Severus Snape Alan Rickman as a similarly cold Reverend Slope giving a short, pointed sermon dealing with music. Now, I'm going to attempt to play for you this 4-minute clip. One thing I won't know until the end is how much Daily Motion wants to advertise to us. So please, if we have to watch a 13-second ad commercial, please forgive me. I've known this clip for a long time, but finding a ad-free version is not as easy as it seems. But to set the scene, Reverend Slope is getting up in the cathedral city of Barchester, and he's going to give a little intro sermon. He's just a lowly chaplain. He's not an exalted member of the upper echelons of the Anglican clergy, but he has something very much to say about music. So without further ado, I have share sound on, and let us see what we can do here. All right, does everyone see Mr. Rickman? All right. Can you see him? Good? All right, let's see if we can get this clip going. And give me a thumbs up if you hear the audio.
And win his approval. And yet, as I stand here, I also see myself in the vision of St. Paul as a workman, rightly dividing the truth in such a way as to meet with the approval of God. But how are we to divide the word of truth? What is the word of truth? How do we know which is God's truth and which is a false truth? We've just listened to some splendid music. And indeed, many of us joined in that self-same music, and no doubt many of you heard in that music God's truth. Certainly, we were in the presence of beauty. Of that, there is no question. But God's truth, I wonder a little, is there not a danger that the outward ceremonies become more important than the inner meaning? But the wonderful music and fine singing tend to obscure rather than illuminate the Word of God. I do not make dogmatic statements, but simply and with great humility put the question, are we in danger of losing sight of the truth? In the Middle Ages, to be sure, the religion of the multitude was an affair of the imagination. The Word of God was adorned with melody, with pretty pictures, even with magical properties. But this is not the Middle Ages, and we are not a multitude of illiterate peasants. This is the age of reason. The 19th century, when the achievements of our great scientists and engineers placed wonders in our midst that our medieval ancestors would have looked upon as miracles. But our scientists and our engineers do not make miracles, they apply reason and logic. And it is my humble belief that the 19th century Christian must approach his faith in the same way. We must not only believe, but digest. We must not only hear, but we must understand. Consider the words of our morning service. How apposite, how intelligible, how reasonable. But most of all, when they are read with simple and distinct decorum. And is not that meaning lost when those simple, reasonable words are obscured with melody and descant, chorus and incantation? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word. Not music, not incantation, not meretricious melody. God is the Word. And the Word is God.
Woo! All right. That was some Severus Snape training right there. What? That's great, right? All right. So, why did I have you look at this? Look at this. First of all, for those of you who are listening, what are the Reverend Slope's main points? What is he trying to get across in this sermon about music and the Word?
That we should honor science, and we should realize that there are scientific results that change the word or give a meaning, a different meaning, and that music is fickle and is not necessary. It's old hat and it was ancient and it doesn't exist anymore because we've gone past it.
So that he's saying we're past music. That was for the Middle Ages where we were superstitious. Now we are reasonable people with science and therefore reasonable Christians. Sheila, you had your hand up. Okay. I don't. Sylvia, you have your hand up.
I kind of related to it as with all the flourishing of religion is where we lose God and the Word. And he said, in the beginning was the Word. And I didn't hear a lot about, oh yeah, okay, this is the science, this is the age of religion, but of reason. But I heard that all this, I mean, I don't know if you, any of you know about the history of the Anglican Church, but going higher church and more embellishing and more ritual. What he's saying, what I heard him saying was that is losing the Word of God.
So he's saying perhaps that You know, in the beginning, by the way, he's quoting the book of John, right? Which is the beginning. In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, right? This is John 1:1, and forward. But that there's a critique that music is, he's saying, obscuring the actual, how, you know, he says, how apposite, how intelligible, that music is obscuring the meaning of what is going on in the prayers. Right? This actually, by the way, this is not a history class, but this is something that in my own research comes up when rabbis get particularly angry about some aspects of Polish cantorial innovations in the 17th century and the 18th century. Like, I used to be able to say amen, but this or you know, but the bracha is so long because you're going whatever that I don't know what this is anymore. But it's nice music, so. Very good. Other summaries of main points that the Reverend Slope is making that we should heed, or at least understand. Any others? I have points from the peanut gallery that or not peanut gallery, everybody from Cantor Schwartz, that music enhances the meaning of the prayers. It's siddur mitzvah. We have, of course, us Cantors are disagreeing with this because if we'd be out of the job.
I just want to say
yes.
That I think I actually think the point that he's making is profound when it comes to praying in a language that is not your vernacular. And I don't know if you ever had all these jokes in your, I remember you could sing Kol Nidre to Yankee Doodle, right? Nobody knows what that means. Kol Nidre, yes, I ravi, Yakareki, Lodakolvi, yeah, right? You can do whatever you want because nobody knows.
It gives me the chills.
Right. But my point, but we used to do, when Neil Blumoff and I were in school together, like every day it was like, how can we completely bastardize some of this Hebrew with some obnoxious melody or not, or a ditty, and that people would like, or singing, Adon Olam to Rock Around the Clock really fast. I mean, I just want to say, like, his point is actually quite profound, if I may say so myself.
I know. It is a profound point that when you understand the words, sometimes the music is overpowering what's going on, and it can be jealous for the words. Marcia.
I just want to say also that he specifically, it's a pointed moment in the TV thing because he uses the word lie. And so he implies that the music lies, that the music doesn't tell the truth about the words. And so I think that really gives what Marcia was saying, the dissonance between what you could do with music and what you should be doing with music, which is to elicit the truth of the words.
Beautiful. I love that, Marcia, and it is so telling. Saying that the music that the music is lying, right? It's like I remember learning a compromise in Canada, this statistic, and someone, if someone is a better sports psychologist than the one who told this to us, please tell me. But the sports psychologist came to the campers and said, communication is 55% body language, 38% tone, and only 7% actual words, right? So this actually, by the way, is quite profound if you're thinking about, wow, Judaism is really the religion of the 7%. But it's also quite profound in that the music is conveying at minimal 5 more times, by controlling the tone, 5 more times information than the actual word itself. So Marcia is right. Music can perhaps lie, in the same way that you can say to someone, I love you, and that doesn't sound right. That sounds like means I'm angry with you because your tone is completely out of sync with your words. And so that is very true. It's a very interesting and deep point. I'm actually quite conflicted I hope in a good way about this, because I just in my historical studies, this shows up, and indeed, I've heard many of those tunes that Rabbi Marcia describes, which come really hit against what it seems like the kavanah of the word is.
Oh, there's clip circulating of Ozzy Schwartz doing "In Kelohenu" to Banana Boat
Yes.
in tribute to Harry Belafonte.
Yes. That I you know what? We could have a very long conversation that could take from now until the end of class about contrafact and how contrafact is effective or not. But I will be truthful with you. I actually shared this clip because I want to highlight, and this does relate eventually to Baruch Shamar. We start with the pop culture and then we get deep in. That one thing that he does say that I think is quite striking is that in the Bible, creation is spoken. You don't have to say, John, in the beginning the word was with God, but Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam, right? God speaks and the world comes into existence. Now we take this for granted because this is part of Shul, and part of Tanakh, right? God doesn't sing the world into existence. God doesn't kill another god and then the world comes out from the dead body of the other god. These are all possibilities in pagan mythologies. But indeed, one of the main things that happens in most creation stories in the pagan world, or in a polytheist world, is that creation is a song. Celtic history has Oran Mor, the great melody, at the beginning of their creation story. Native American scholar Natalie Curtis points out that in nearly every Indian, she means Native American, in nearly every Indian myth, the creator god sings things into life. In Australia, Aboriginal creation myths tell of legendary totemic beings who wandered over the continent in the dream time, singing out the name of everything that crossed their path, birds, animals, plants, rocks, waterfalls, and so singing the world into existence. And as Ted Joya observes, he gave me these first two quotes and this one, Pythagoras turned this almost universal mythology into philosophy when, holding up a stone, he told his students, "This is frozen music." Okay? Sheila, I see your hand.
So I have 3 quick observations. I'll try
Please.
to keep them quick. So it's so lovely to see you all. Number 1, when we're in prayer and song, and we know the Hebrew, but we have no clue what it means. So there's my context. Are we looking for connection, for meaning, or for entertainment? So, for example, yesterday my son and I went to go see Hello God, Are You There? It's Me, Margaret. The essence of that very wonderful book and now the film is the exact same questions that were brought up in this sermon. Where is God? How do you relate to God? This is in the context of a 6th grade girl, right, when she goes to temple. Then I think about Hebrew, and I'm glad you mentioned Camp Ramah, because we all can do the Birkat Hamazon, but how many kids at camp saying, "I miss my mom," or Harachaman, like always changing the phonetic meaning, because of the sounds. Had that question, and then just maybe those are my only 2 points. Is it fun? We had Deo to Shabbat Shalom last week. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat come and me wanna go stay home, So do any of those have more or less meaning if we're getting people together as a community to pray, to inspire and instill Jewish connection? I don't know.
First of all, it's a beautiful point that you make, Sheila. I would say, and I know this is, I don't want to derail this, but it's, if you're honoring the memory of someone who was a friend to the Jewish people, and you sing something like Shabbat Shalom, Shabbos comes and I want to stay home, or something like that, that's actually not contradicting the meaning. That's sort of like a musical interpretation of a concept. It's when you take a segment of liturgy, which is what we're really working with here, that's been fixed for thousands of years, and you impose upon it a melody maybe to make it palatable, to get more involvement, but the melody itself really doesn't capture the essence. And, you know, and then of course, talking about the resentment against cantors who maybe did capture the essence, but for hours, that's a different problem. I mean, you know what I'm saying? There's lots of ways to be offensive with even with appropriate music. So those are just my thoughts.
So I'm gonna move us forward to our source sheet, but I want to sum up and address a little of what was said. You know, it's so interesting. The same way that using a contrafact or whatever, banana boat, something brings a new level of meaning, perhaps to the words, or perhaps not to the words at all, just in the moment. It's the same way that what parts of this class have been trying to do is to give the intertext underneath the prayer so that you have the background melody, right, that the person is hearing. So, you know, if I did Ahava Rabbah on Purim to Bad Romance by Lady Gaga, and you knew Bad Romance by Lady Gaga, you could understand something about what I was trying to express about, you know, my relationship to God. That's not the song I would choose particularly, but there are some people for whom perhaps that is true. But for now, I am moving us actually out of applied synagogue music and contrafact and into cosmology and the sung nature of existence in non-Hebrew sources. And I'm actually going to bring us back to another English source. Do I have a Tolkien lover, a J.R.R. Tolkien lover in this room? Okay, I see Elaine. Elaine, would you please read? You can look. We have the source sheet, and I'm going to. It's been now put in the chat.
Let me get it open.
And I am going to share my screen with it in just a moment.
I don't have it in the chat because I joined a little late. Can someone?
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to share my screen for it in just a moment. Okay. So if everyone will open it up to the extent that you can. And actually, let me resend that just to make it smoother. I'm resending the Google Drive link. This is a text from the arguably the hardest J.R.R. Tolkien book to read, which is the Silmarillion. Has anyone actually read the Silmarillion before?
I've tried a couple of times.
I see Marilyn nodding her head. I have also tried to read the Silmarillion. It's not the easiest read, but it is it has a lot of biblical aspects to it, including the one we're going to see right now. Okay,
I've got your text. You ready?
Yes, I'm gonna just give me 1 second to share my screen, and so everyone can see it. There we go. Up it goes. Everyone sees Baruch Shamar with the Tolkien creation story?
Yes.
There we go. All right, please read the full. This is all excerpted, by the way. This is a longer text than this, but I'm trying to get the basics of what's going on. Okay, go ahead.
There was Eru, the one who in Arda is called Iluvatar, and he made first the Ainur, the holy ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. Then Iluvatar said to them, of the theme that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music. And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, ye shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices, if he will. But I will sit and hearken, and be glad that through you great beauty has been wakened into song. Then the voices of the Ainur, like unto harps and lutes, and pipes and trumpets, and viols and organs, and like unto countless choirs singing with words, began to fashion the theme of Iluvatar to a great music. And a sound arose of endless interchanging melodies woven in harmony that passed beyond hearing into the depths and into the heights, and the places of the dwelling of Iluvatar were filled to overflowing. But when they were come into the void, Iluvatar said to them, behold your music. And he showed to them a vision, giving to them sight where before was only hearing. And they saw a new world made visible before them, and it was globed amid the void, and it was sustained therein, but was not of it. This is awesome. I love this. Can I read this before I sing Baruch She'amar the next?
You can if you like. But remember, Baruch She'amar, God speaks, he doesn't sing, right?
No, that's because they wrote it wrong. I knew that.
That's because, by the way, I read recently that there is but the more mystical you get, the more people are convinced that the world was sung into existence.
Of course it was.
Of course it was. How could this not be a song? A song is a natural expression of creation. So the more Kabbalistic you get, the more, you get things like Perek Shira, right, which is a big book that just tells you what everything in the world is singing today. All the species of birds and the plants and the rocks. There's a pasuk for everything that everyone is singing. But in here, can someone summarize what's going on in this creation story, which is at the heart of all of the Lord of the Rings stuff, is behind it? How has creation happened, and how would we characterize it?
God sings the universe into existence.
There you go, Marcia. God
Which, of
sings.
course, is the right way. I mean, how could that not be right?
How could you not sing the universe into existence, right? And indeed, not just sings into existence, but the angels are involved as the harmony, right?
About halfway through, I was about to start the Kedusha, but yeah.
There you go, right? Yeah, that's right. Actually, this is a really interesting Kedusha image of angels singing that we could really, sometimes it's hard to think about angels singing. Maybe the beginning of the Silmarillion is a really good way for people to access that. I did not add that, because it would get far afield, that the bad guy, Melkor, is the guy who sings with dissonance. So Melkor is the Schönberg of no. So Melkor is the guy who sings dissonantly, and therefore is cast out in this sort of figure of Lucifer, a parallel to Lucifer in the Christian tradition. So Sheila says basically in the chat, basically Bob Dylan was God. Here, I can't say that, but here we are saying that I think that and Tolkien, who, by the way, I think based this a lot on Celtic, on the great melody, the Oma, what did I call it? The Omar, I wrote it down. The Oran Mor, the great melody that's at the heart of the Celtic mythology, because he was a historian and a linguist of all this stuff. And when they reviewed the Silmarillion, they said, it's too Celtic, I won't publish this thing. At least in his lifetime. The main point is this: even as late as J.R.R. Tolkien, we have this, this deep-welled idea that the world is sung into existence, right? That's at the heart of mythology. Now, we're going to move on a little bit, because the great irony is, of course, in the Jewish tradition, at this moment of the service, which is called Psukei de Simra, right? The verses of song, where the prayer happens for Baruch She'amar, and I'm going to scroll up to sources, the sources dealing with source 2, with section 2. That this moment of the service, it's called Baruch She'amar, blessed is the one who spoke and the world came into being. That we have all this stuff about, and we're about to sing all these psalms. It's the most singiest part of the entire morning service, or at least it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be that way. We're going to learn about that. That we have this prayer about God speaking the world into existence and not singing it. This is kind of weird. Let's get deeper into that. I just want to give you a little history of this prayer, Baruch She'amar, which is old, but for us Jews, not so old. 9th century. That's kind of old. So can I get a reader for the two sources, the two Babylonian sources here at the top and at the bottom of where it says the Amram Gaon and the Natan Bavli? Can I get a reader for that? You can do both of them, please.
Sure. And when the people of Israel enter their synagogues in the cities in order to pray, the chazan of the synagogue rises and commences. Blessed be he who spoke and the world came into being. Siddur Rav Amram Gaon, 9th century. Entering below the exilarch come youths chosen from amongst the chiefs of the community and their leaders, distinguished youth, adept in voice and melody, with pleasant voices and acquainted in every matter. The Chazan HaKnesset intones Baruch She'amar. The youths respond to each sentence with Baruch Hu. When the Chazan begins Mizmor Shir, the youths respond by singing Tov Lehodot, Psalm 92, whereupon the entire congregation recites the entire Pesukei de Zimra to the end.
Thank you. That was excellent, Suzanne. I must say, we have my class has really great readers. We have a former. I know we have a number of cantors and former and former/current actors here. This is just. I love it when people read text and mean it. That's great. Thank you, Suzanne. So here we have the real origin. The earliest time we have Baruch She'amar cited is in this first text, in the first siddur, the siddur of Rav Amram Gaon, who worked in Babylonia at the Babylonian Academy of Sura. This is one of the two big centers of learning and of really control over about 90% of world Jewry was administered by the exilarch from Babylonia, from these two yeshivas too. And then we have one of the first instances of post-temple choral singing, where, and this is in Edelson, this is in all the old scholarship stuff, this is in Elbogen, right? That it was published in the 15th, 16th century, but this early source, that the exilarch, who's like the president of Babylonian Jewry, of all these Jews under the caliphate, comes together, and we have singing, and we have this choir of kids. So this is some of the earliest, stuff we have about Baruch She'amar, that it's done publicly. It's done when you come into shul. That's very important, right? They come in, and the Cantor is like the official dude, not just the prayer leader, but sort of the main administrator of the synagogue, says Baruch She'amar. He says, and by the way, they list the entire prayer. So first thing you do when you go in shul in Babylon, also adorned for a special, like banana boat for Harry Belafonte. When we have a simcha, like the exilarch coming to town, it gets adorned by a kids choir as early as the 900s. That's super early and cool. And by the way, the tradition of singing Baruch She'amar and all these psalms that come after it is a very old, specifically Ashkenazi thing to do. They have it also in some parts of Italy, and it develops a little later in other communities. But as early as someone like the Tur, and I'll read this source, and we'll get another reader for the actual prayer. The Tur is teaching in Spain. He's an Ashkenazi posek, an Ashkenazi rabbi, and he writes that you have to say Baruch She'amar with song and melody. And then later, Rabbi Mordechai Yaffe in Poland and Prague also wrote this. And in Bohemia and Poland, they have these chavurot, these groups, these Baruch She'amar societies of people with pleasant voices, and they would go up, the Chovos Yair says, to the Migdal. And I think that's the raised platform in the center of the room, rather than at the front, than the bima by the Torah at the front. Everyone gets up in the middle of the room, and they sing together in holy melody. So singing Baruch She'amar, doing it for a long time, having a special, club or singing circle like we have now, just for that section of the service, and spending a lot of time on it, is a very, very Ashkenazi, or if I'm being very Ashkenormative, very Jewish thing to do. But I'm not that Ashkenormative. I'm self-aware of my Ashkenormativity and try to be meichel on it as much as possible. So again, this is just a long way of saying this is an old prayer. It's from Babylonia. First thing you do when you get into shul, and there's a cultivated tradition among Ashkenazi Jews of singing it out loud. All right. But now let's go to the prayer itself. Can I get a reader in the English, or in the English, please? And while this person is reading, as they manifest themselves to do so, I want you to tell me, what is the connection between the first section, which is all the Baruch She'amar stuff, all the Baruch this, Baruch that. I see Cantor Schwartz, you're our reader. What is the connection between the first section and the second section? Cantor Schwartz, take it away.
At this point, I've been doing egalitarian prayers so long, it feels...
you can read it in whatever translation you find most authentic to you. That's fine.
Okay. Blessed is the one who spoke, and the world came into being. Blessed is Adonai. Blessed is the one who maintains creation. Blessed is Adonai who says and does. Blessed is Adonai who decrees and fulfills. Blessed is Adonai who has compassion upon the earth. Blessed is Adonai who has compassion on his creatures. Blessed is Adonai who rewards well those who revere him. Blessed is Adonai who lives forever and exists eternally. Blessed is Adonai who redeems and saves. Blessed is God's holy name. Then going on, but you're going to have to move it up a little. Thank you. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, the almighty, merciful Father, I'll say, who is verbally extolled by his people, praised and glorified by the tongue of God's pious ones and servants, and through the songs of David, your servant. We will extol you, Adonai, our God, with praises and psalms. We will exalt, praise, and glorify you. We will mention your name and proclaim you, our ruler, our God, unique one, life of the worlds, sovereign, praised and glorified forever is God's great name. Praised are you, Adonai, our King, our ruler, who is extolled with praises.
Thank you to Cantor Schwartz, and thank you for the on the fly egalitarian retranslation. It is much appreciated. This is just the one that came through Safaria to me. So, our question: what is the connection between paragraph 1 for you? What do you feel is the connection between paragraph 1, all the blesseds, the litany, and paragraph 2? Yes, I see, Elaine, your hand.
Well, I could say that the first paragraph is explaining who it is we're about to praise and what this God has done, and then we're going to say now we're going to do the praise. We will extol you with praises and psalms. You are worth singing to, and so we're going to do that.
Very good. A very good solid connection, and I'll call on Alex. One solid connection, as Elaine says, is that we're doing what most Jewish prayers do. They define the relationship, they DTR first, and then they move forward. So this is who our God is. This is how we feel about him, and then it is our blessing to do all this great singing for you. Alex, go ahead.
The first part is heavenly. The second part is earthly. So I believe that the first part is telling everybody that God is the creator. So that's the non-tangible or intangible thing. And then what we can do about it is tangible. So through our actions, we can consider serving God in the way that God wants us. So one is you can't touch it, you can feel it. And the other one, you should be able to touch it and feel it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we're getting a profile of the heavenly, and then the profile of how we express that and feel that on earth. Beautiful, beautiful. Sylvia.
Well, along those lines, thank you, Alex. That was brilliant. The way I read it was that there was somebody speaking for us in the beginning. Didn't mean that it was heavenly, but maybe it was the priests or whoever. And then we responded, and we are speaking now from our own voice and our own insights. All right.
Very good, very good. So we have sort of the reinforcing that's the us really here at the bottom. It's our stake rather than the sort of formal. And you could say the Chazan HaKnesset does this opening thing as well. Like does the whole thing actually. So interesting. So we were making some good connections between these two. I will add for you, which may or may not be surprising, that in this version, the versions of this prayer in the land of Israel don't have the Baruch Shemar part at all. They have just the bottom. So the Palestinian strain, we call it the Eretz Yisraeli version of this opening, is just the bottom. It's just, okay, thank you, God, you're so wonderful. We're going to praise you with these songs of David, and that's how we're going to open up. So it is in that Babylonian context, really, that we get the Baruch She'amar bit that we see here, where God is speaking the world into existence. By the way, there also are elaborations of this, which get longer. There's a Sephardic variant later where it says, blessed is God for giving the Jewish people rest on the holy day of Shabbat. But the Ashkenazi version, which is the one we have here, is one of the shortest versions. It's very, very close to the one in the Rav Amram's Siddur. So we should really look at this opening a little bit, which is very interesting, as an addition. It's a Babylonian addition. Why? What is it really adding to that moment? And again, it really, to me, heightens this great irony that we're opening this great thing of praise and singing with something about God speaking. It seems a little more like a Reverend Slope, a little more stern. And there's a reason. There's a reason why it's a little more stern. Not just because speaking the world into existence has deeper implications for cosmology and what God is about than singing it into existence, but because we need to look at that intertext. We need to hear the melody going on behind these words. So let's go down. Can I get a reader for Sanhedrin 19a? These are three sources we're going to look at where the language of Baruch She'amar shows up in earlier rabbinic literature, both in short and in long form. Marilyn, would you mind reading for us? You're muted.
Okay. All right. The slave of King Yanai killed a person. Shimon ben Shattach said to the sages, "Put your eyes on him and let us judge him." Shimon ben Shattach said to him, "King Yanai, stand on your feet, and witnesses will testify against you. And it is not before us that you are standing, but before the one who spoke and the world came into being that you are standing."
Okay, so what is this? Is She'amar v'haya it says b'lifnei hu she'amar v'haya ha'olam. That's the language that's being used here. So what is the context? How would you summarize like this general scene of what's going on? What are we being hyperlinked? What scene are we being hyperlinked to by use of this language? What type of scene is this? Or what's going? Summarize what's going on.
Sinai.
I said Sinai. It's not Sinai.
Well, it's judgment of.
Yes, very good. It's judgment. Elaine, I saw your hand as well.
It's a trial of some kind, clearly.
It's a trial. This is the trial where King Yanai is known, by the way, in the Talmud. I didn't know this. I had to look this up. King Yanai is a secular authority, and he's a bad dude. And so the rabbis who don't have authority over him are going to drag him into their rabbinic court to try him, even though it's not they're trying to try him in a religious court, not in a civil court. So all the complexities of trying to try someone in a religious court, not a civil court, are there. But this is being invoked to say, you are under judgment. The one who spoke in the world, who came into being, is your judge, Melech Yanai. And by the way, if you look deeper into the story, you will find it is it ends up that the rabbis say, don't put these kind of kings on. Don't put secular authorities on trial in religious courts. They end up, as bad things end up happening in the story. But nevertheless, Shimon ben Shattach is saying, this is your trial, and this is the real judge. Okay? Let's move on to another source, which even gives more of what's going on. Tana debe Eliyahu Zuta. Can I get a reader for that? Someone who hasn't read yet. Susan, would you mind reading for us? Susan Glass?
Blessed is he who spoke, and the world came into being. Blessed is he. Blessed is he who makes the work of creation. Blessed is he who says, decrees, and fulfills, who remembers the beginnings and passes over the ends, who could have said, my nard reeks of sin, rather than saying, my nard gives forth its fragrance.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for reading. So in this case, we're getting Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam, Baruch hu oseh ma'aseh v'reshit, slightly different. Baruch omer v'yoseh, Baruch ozer u'mekayem. All that text, very central to Baruch she'amar. And what is it saying about God and what God says about us? By the way, Sheila asked, "What's a nard?" A spikenard, it says, is a type of very fragrant plant, a nicely fragrant plant. That's why in Song of Songs it says, "My spikenard gives." It's not that word doesn't really sound great in English, but my nerdi, my nerd gives forth its fragrance. So, what is this saying about how God feels about us? Marcia.
It has this, the context is that God's memory goes back to the very first moments of creation. This goes back to that trial notion that you were looking at. So if God's memory goes back to the very, very beginning of creation, God will know whether, you smell naughty or nice. God will know the content of your soul, because God is the one who spoke and brought the entire world into creation.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What a beautiful insight, Marcia. Thank you. Other comments on this?
By the way, I'm Marcia, and she's Marcia, and that's how we keep the world straight.
All right. I will make sure you're Marcia for me. Thank you. Elaine, I see your hand raised.
Well, it's interesting. I had a slightly different thing when it says, God who remembers the beginnings and passes over the end, who could have said, my nard reeks of sin, rather than saying my nard gives forth its fragrance. It's almost as if we're looking at God that gives the world the benefit of the doubt.
Yes, we definitely have a God that is passing. Hevir is like ma'avir rishon, right? God who passes over sins and lets things go in order to still stay in relationship with us imperfect human beings. Definitely. Sheila.
Thank you. I may be deconstructing it way out of alignment, but I'm thinking about the L in world. And I think, to me, it's like when we look at English or the translation of Hebrew into English, what if there was no L and it was word? So it's where it says, he's saying, where did I just go? Was it the one above?
It's the first line.
Okay, thanks, Rosalie. Blessed is he who spoke and the world came into being. Well, what if this is really kind of this existential Descartes kind of thing? I speak, therefore the world exists. And we create this vocabulary, we create these images and syntax, we create definitions, but we all know the power of the thought and the power of a word and how it can impact anyone. What if we believe what we want to believe, and we see what we want to see, and we speak what we think is our truth, and it's all up here anyway in our creative minds?
Well, I love your connection between word and world. It's just an L's difference, but certainly Jews of all types are making that connection, because because God, the act of creativity of the world is through the word. So it's just, you can say the L is for some. I haven't made the gematria yet, but I'm sure it's there. I'm sure it's there. By the way, if you look at this source, I just excerpted a little bit. The next thing that comes after this, it says that when Israel said "Na'aseh v'nishma," we will do and we will listen. We will do and we will listen to the commandments at Sinai. Then God sends 600,000 angels down and gives each member of Bnei Israel a crown for Na'aseh and a crown for Nishma. So this whole section is talking about this connection of God that's based in acceptance, our acceptance of mitzvot, and our being in relationship to God, which allows God's judgment to perhaps be tempered, right? He's be able to be ma'avir. He remembers the beginnings. He remembers how we come from. He knows the beauty of our relationship in its inception and not in just the difficult things. So it's an inclusive and embracing setting, even in the face that we have here of judgment.
I have a question. It's Rosalie.
Please, Rosalie.
Okay. I noticed in this, is this called a pasuk? I don't know. I'm making up a fancy word. I just have heard it. Okay. Underneath the Zuta 4, when it says, blessed is he who spoke and the world came into being, there is a comma
and then a semicolon after each, going through. And there is no punctuation, of course, in Hebrew, but I think it's interesting that it's written this way in English rather than the blessed starting with a capital letter, capital B, each time. There has to be a difference in whoever is interpreting this.
It's possible that the way that the litany of all these blesseds is breaking up in the English translation, that there's something more subtle being said. Perhaps they're trying to pair them. Again, this is actually what trope does, right? It's like the punctuation of Torah reading, right? Blessed is he who makes the work of creation. Blessed is he who says, decrees, and fulfills. It's trying to create little phrases, little clauses for you in the English. I think that's a wise observation.
I guess it would be maybe more poetic if it were done with the periods after a thought.
I'm not. Yeah, you could look at you could look at a number of editions of the siddur, and there are different ways that people do this with semicolon versus period. And I'm not as subtle of a grammarian as you to figure out how all of the complexities in which they mean. But I appreciate your sensitivity to it. Ria, I see your hand, and then we're going to go on to the next source. Ria, your hand is up, but you're muted.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I've been driving and now I'm stopped driving.
Ria, I can hear that you're driving, but your audio is not coming over very well. I'm sorry, Ria. Would you mind putting you might have to put it in the chat. I apologize that the audio is not going so well. So let's with apologies to Ria, let's move on to this last source in this section. And Ria, please do write me in the chat. I'm sorry, the audio is not working.
Were these written during Babylonian exile, or was it written after?
The Tanit Zuta is a rabbinic source. I think it's contemporaneous with the rabbis in the 5th and 6th century. And certainly this next source is. Alex, would you do me a favor and read Brachot 57b, these the 5 blessings?
Rav Hanuna taught, one who sees the wicked Babylonia must recite 5 blessings. One who saw the ruins of Babylonia recites, blessed, who destroyed the wicked Babylonia. One who saw the ruins of Nebuchadnezzar's house recites, blessed, who destroys the house of the wicked Nebuchadnezzar. One who saw the lion's den on the furnace recites, blessed, who performs miracles for our ancestors in this place. One who saw mercy recites, blessed, who has shown patience to those who violate his will. One who saw the place from each is taken recites, blessed, who speaks and acts, decrees and fulfills.
Sorry, thank you very much. That was also excellent reading, by the way.
Did you understand that? It wasn't American English.
I know. I've watched Monty Python from too young of an age not to understand British English, so no problem. That worked fine. So this, fascinatingly, what is the by the way, so the thing we have in Baruch Shemar is at the end, Baruch Omer ve'oseh Baruch gozer umkayem. Blessed is he who speaks, and by the way, here it would be Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. Omer ve'oseh hagozer umkayem. That would be the blessing that you would be saying putatively for the fall of Babylon, right? These are the blessings you say when you see that Babylon has fallen. What do you think it means, one who saw a place from which earth is taken? This I didn't know before I look it up, but I'm going to give you the first chance then.
I would guess a grave.
A grave is a good guess. This is not what I found, although I suppose it's possible. A place where you take earth from. This is like a quarry. This is like a place, because in Babylon, or not just a quarry, but in Babylon, they would take, earth from the ruins of the old empire, and use it to build new stuff because it's still good material. Or they would use it for fertilizer because there was it was good soil because a lot of people had died. So this is fascinating. This third blessing that we're saying is actually one you say when you're blessing the fall of the wicked empire. It's like the blessing you would say on Tatooine when you come across the big star destroyer that's crashed, right? It's the blessing you say. The empire's gone. Thank God. So again, to conclude, we see with these blessings in Baruch She'amar. Ria, I see. Actually, I'll let me say this the concluding word, and I'll see if we can get you in on the audio. We see that these are three sources that have to do with the judgment of God, right? That we might not like the stern reverend slope from the beginning, but indeed the spoken word here, Baruch She'amar, is taking as its background music at least three scenes of God's judgment. God being the judge of this king Yanai, the secular authority before the rabbis, God being the judge of Israel, but who also is merciful at the same time, and this scene of the blessing you say to show of God's judgment of Babylonia, that we're using using their ruins for fertilizer and new construction. So this is just really interesting that in the most musical part of the service, the back text of this Babylonian thing is all very filled with judgment. It's filled with judgment. And perhaps as for the Babylonians who are living in Gullus, who are living in exile, that needs to be the first thing that they hear when they come into shul, right? Because they have this experience of being outside of the land of Israel and being under hegemony of other people and subject to whatever the caliphate has in store for them. And so they really want to affirm who is really in charge as they begin to sing. They really want to feel that sense of, no, God's judgment is actually because he's in charge of everything that's going on out here, and therefore I can sing. Ria, please.
Okay, so it's kind of a side thing. And somebody, and I don't know who, talked about the existential concept. And so when God speaks, God exists. That I speak, therefore I am. And so that the spoken word is the one that is the creation, that God creates God's self by speaking. Isn't that unbelievable?
I didn't think of that. That's so interesting. I speak, therefore I am. That's Sheila was bringing up that before. Yes.
Yes. So and the you could say I sing, therefore I am, but it's a speaking that it affirms your existence, that we affirm ourselves as existing, and that's God, the power and all. So anyway, I just thought, oh my goodness, this is an amazing idea.
It is.
That's
I
all.
agree. I thank you for amplifying it and sharing it. So
Matt, where does Matovu Alecha Yaakov Mishkanesecha Yaakov come in, which is the first prayer you recite as you are entering a synagogue, I believe?
Well, here's what I'll address Matovu and wrap us up for the week. In that Matovu is a prayer that is meant for when you come into a formal sanctuary. We have all sorts of beautiful settings for it. Matovu, or the Danny Massing, or the Matovu, Lewandowski, thank God. But interestingly enough, for me, when I think of Matovu, I think of Bil'am, of course, the sorcerer who says this, and in some ways, the Torah took a lot of magic out of the world. It has all these laws against magicians and sorcerers and witches and things like that. But that's because in that world, and it's actually in that same world where all the creation myths were singing everything into existence, it was this cosmology of we are, of sometimes nihilism and sometimes of objectification, right? We need to manipulate with song and magic spells the world because the world and nature is out together. So there's a great sense of anxiety in pagan life. And so Matovu is God saying to this great sorcerer, no, is this these words of goodness coming out of the words of the mouth of someone whose job normally it is to disrupt and to cast spells for their own power rather than for something greater than themselves. And so for me, I think of it, and I always think of that in some ways, the last remnants of magic for Jews, they're not last remnants. I mean, there's other remnants, but really are blessings. Because what is a blessing? A bracha is that I can use my words to cause and bring good into the world. What's the opposite of that? Is cursing somebody, right? Is that our words in some ways are our own little magic spells. They have, and this gets a little bit into the existentialism, thing of what words create. But words like that, that God takes what's going to be a curse and turns it into a blessing. And we should be reminded that our words, even though we're not wizards, I sort of think the last thing when God sort of sucks power out of the world and says, no, all power belongs to God, but our words are still left as our magic spells to be able to create goodness or, God forbid, to create ill as well. So even though Matovu is a prayer for that, once we get formalized synagogues and stuff, this is kind of before at least the halachic codes in the Middle Ages and for Ashkenazi ideas about synagogue worship, and I don't know enough about Matovu to give much more on it. This is a long way of saying that in Baruch She'amar, in a prayer about speech and God's speech being powerful, we're having an experience, and the readers of the prayer and the writers of the prayer are having an experience of God being powerful and also God's judgment, because there's that same sense of anxiety. But still, that the beautiful thing is that even in this experience of judgment that's going in the scenes behind Baruch She'amar, in some ways it's being subverted by the music, that the magic comes back in with the music. And so I think that there's a really good opportunity here with Baruch She'amar to pray the back end, because there's a lot of justice we need to pray for right now. And each of those little stories of the trial of Shimon ben Shattach and of God, knowing us and saying, no, your spikenard is very fragrant. I know you from way back. Or of this final scene of looking at the ruins of the evil empire. That there's space to pray from that, but that space, the judgmental space of that, is subverted into the experience, subverted by the experience of music. So that's my long drush on Baruch She'amar. I'll stick around for 5 more minutes, and I just want to thank everyone for being here. We'll be back next week to the beginning of the service. We've been doing this in reverse order, but that's how I learn songs. I learn the end first and then back. And we'll be going into the Brachot HaShachar, the morning blessings, and into some of how the allusions really change and give some good backstory and back music to those prayers as well. Sylvia, yes.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Hazan. Well, I just want to say, because I know that Rabbi Marsha hasn't been able to stay this time, on behalf of Rabbi Marsha and the Jewish Collaborative, thank you so much for a wonderful, wonderful class and series of classes. And we're so happy that you all came. Thank you all for coming. Come back. And I did put in our website in case for some reason, which escapes me right now, that you're not on our mailing list. If you'd like to be on our mailing list, it's right there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you so much for studying with me today. See you next week.
Thank you for being our teacher.
Thank you,
Matt. You are awesome. I'm going to
Lesson.
steal more of this to teach classes here.
Please do. You're welcome. It's not stealing.
Yeah, come and work in the UK, Matt.
Matt, it's great. How's your dissertation going?
It's going well. I'm publishing a chapter of it this fall in the Journal of Synagogue Music, and
Yay!
Yeah, I'm in the middle of Germany with a bunch of angry rabbis, so I'm having a good time. Not physically, mentally. I'm mentally with them.
Sylvia, are the recordings from the 2 previous sessions, which unfortunately I had to miss, are they available?
Yes, they're on.